a slowdown and a contraction in the global luxury market. About 50 million people either opted out or were forced out of the luxury market over the past 2 years.
I do feel people started to get tired of purchasing products and realize that we just bought too much. And it didn't really make us happy.
Birkin bag at Hermes boutique will cost you 38,000 USD. But what is the real cost out of the factory? Today, I'm going to break it down in front of you step by step. First thing first, Hermes only use the leathers from the 3 top-level suppliers. One is called Nuti from Italy. And the second is Weinheim from Germany. And the third is Haas from France. One piece of Togo leather, the same leather as this one, will cost 450 USD. And one piece of the leather is only enough to make one Birkin. Okay? The thread. And of course, for Hermes Birkin, the thread is also the best top level. It's called Fil al Chinois from France. This is actually the Rolls Royce in thread. For each bag, the cost is 25 USD. And then the hardware. See, this hardware is called 316 hardware. It's also known as the ocean stainless steel because it can withstand ocean of seawater. It's the best stainless steel. For one piece of bag, the hardware will cost 150 USD. The edge oil. This edge oil is imported from Italy. It's called It Seal edge oil. For each bag, it will cost 50 USD. The interior lining, it used lambskin imported from France. For each bag, the cost will be 100 USD. And also inside, there is a zipper from Riri brand. And the zipper for one bag is 10 USD. Most of them are made in China. And most of them are made in our factory. Yeah, I'm telling you. But why these luxury brands never tell you that? Because they are trying to pretend to be products of some sophisticated European countries like Italy or...
The point is, I think it's crazy how designer brands have been selling things for thousands when China sell them on and literally they're so cheap. If the Chinese manufacturers are making the same, like the actual Birkins, and then they are also selling these on the side as well, technically this is an absolute fucking bargain because it's the exact same material as a Birkin.
Oh, that's not a quality issue. It's luxury brand washing.
Hermes, you guys, it's time to show off your factories. No, I don't want to wait to go on YouTube and watch a beautiful documentary on show them off right here on TikTok. Let the world see. Okay, get like China. You got to be ghetto about it. Just let people know.
Going to be successful. In a few weeks, the shop was open. We sell the most expensive products in a country where everybody was going by.
What if I told you your $4,000 Louis Vuitton bag might have been made in the exact same Chinese factory as a $50 knockoff? And the only difference is a logo. The luxury world is spiraling. Viral videos, insider confessions, and factory walkthroughs are pulling back the silk curtain on high fashion. And what's underneath isn't French ateliers or Italian craftsmanship. It's mass production, Chinese labor, and a carefully curated lie. At the center of the firestorm, Louis Vuitton, and the woman lighting the match, none other than Candace Owens. This isn't just brand damage. It's an existential crisis. A fashion empire built on illusion is crumbling in real time. And the receipts? They're flooding TikTok, Reddit, and fashion forums by the minute. Bags supposedly made in France now come with factory footage from Guangdong. Social media isn't speculating, it's documenting. And the silence from Louis Vuitton? Deafening. If these claims are even half true, the entire luxury industry could be a house of cards. Let's break it down bag by bag, lie by lie. They lied to you. The $3,000 Louis Vuitton bag sitting in your closet. Yeah, that one you bought thinking it was crafted in a tiny French atelier by artisans with centuries of heritage in their fingertips. There's a strong chance it was made in a factory in China. And if that feels like a slap in the face, just wait. Because this story doesn't stop at one bag or one brand. It's about the slow collapse of an entire illusion. A mythology carefully curated by the luxury fashion world. And the cracks are now gaping wide. Enter Candace Owens. Yes, that Candace Owens, conservative firebrand, media provocateur, and now the unlikely face of a luxury fashion expose that's blowing up online. She didn't just talk about it. She dropped receipts, viral videos, supplier documents, raw factory footage, images that directly challenge everything Louis Vuitton wants you to believe about its made in France narrative. And whether you love her or hate her, she has the internet's attention, and she's aiming straight at the throat of the fashion elite. The moment she posted that video, cold, unapologetic, and full of fury, the luxury world flinched. Because Candace didn't just accuse Louis Vuitton of outsourcing. She accused them of deceit. She called them out for charging thousands for what she claimed were Chinese-made goods parading around in French drag. And just like that, the whispers that had been circulating in niche fashion forums and Reddit threads for years exploded into a full-on digital uprising. But here's the kicker. This scandal isn't new. It's been festering, hidden behind leather swatches, brand campaigns, and smoke and mirror marketing. From a moment Louis Vuitton was absorbed into the LVMH empire, a global luxury conglomerate that values scalability over soul, the craftsmanship narrative began to shift. Slowly, quietly, deceitfully, factories sprouted across Spain, Italy, and yes, even China. Production scaled, prices soared, but the myth? That stayed intact. Until now. Now, that pristine image, the delicate French hands lovingly stitching monograms under warm Provençal light, is collapsing. And the luxury world knows it. They've spent decades selling not just handbags, but stories. Stories of legacy, heritage, exclusivity. And in one viral clip, that carefully constructed fantasy unraveled in real time. This isn't just about Louis Vuitton. This is about trust. Consumer trust. Cultural trust. If the most iconic name in fashion can pass off Chinese manufacturing as French luxury with zero accountability, what else have they been lying about? What does made in France even mean anymore? Who decides what's authentic? And who's just getting played? This is a reckoning. And the worst part? They knew you wouldn't ask questions. They counted on it. They bet that as long as the logo was visible and the price tag obscene, you'd never dig deeper. But now, thanks to whistleblowers, TikTok sleuths, and yes, even controversial voices like Candace Owens, the fashion world's dirty secret is out in the open. And there's no going back. This is the beginning of the end for the illusion. It started with a single clip. Grainy, shaky, filmed on a smartphone, but devastating. A Chinese factory worker stands in front of a cluttered workbench, holding what looks unmistakably like a Louis Vuitton never full tote. Not a knockoff, not a dupe. The real thing, monogram canvas, leather trim, barcode tag still attached. And then he says it clearly, directly, without hesitation. We made this. Not France. That sentence hit the internet like a grenade. Within hours, TikTok was flooded with videos stitched, duet, and reposted by stunned users. Chinese workers were coming forward, some anonymously, others openly, walking through the very factories where luxury magic supposedly isn't supposed to happen. We saw rows of LV bags lined up for inspection. We saw bins of embossed leather panels waiting for assembly. We saw tags marked with FR, ready to be sewn in. Not because the bags were French, but because they were going to be. One clip zoomed in on a material shipment receipt from a logistics company in Shenzhen. Another showed a computer screen with timestamps, order numbers, and client codes. LVMH, glaring in the top corner like a smoking gun. These weren't just wild accusations. They were timestamps, supply chain logs, raw, uncut footage that reeked of authenticity. Unscripted, unedited, uncomfortable. In one of the most viral clips, now sitting at over 12 million views, a woman walks through a dusty warehouse filled with stacks of partially assembled bags. They tell you this is from France, she says in Mandarin, but it's made right here. By us. Every day. Thousands. The camera pans, and for a split second, we see a stack of orange Louis Vuitton boxes. Yes, those boxes, neatly folded and waiting to be packed. The comments section exploded. I paid $3,800 for a bag made in the same building as AliExpress merch. Wow, is this legal? I feel sick. People were tagging friends, influencers, even consumer watchdog accounts. And slowly, the mainstream began to take notice. This wasn't some blurry, overexposed gotcha moment. This was documented proof, filmed inside the production lines luxury houses have spent millions to keep hidden. It wasn't just about where the bags were made. It was about how perfectly these clips lined up with years of whispered rumors. It was the gut punch confirmation that the emperor had no clothes, just logos and lies. And as the footage piled up, the outrage wasn't just about deception. It was about betrayal. These weren't bargain shoppers buying fakes on a street corner. These were loyal consumers who'd invested in what they were told was heritage, who bought into the dream of owning a slice of old-world craftsmanship, who thought they were paying for artistry, not mass production. And suddenly, every bag, every receipt, every influencer's unboxing video felt like part of a lie. Let's strip it down to the bones, because once you understand how the luxury fashion machine actually works, you'll never look at a Louis Vuitton bag the same way again. The illusion starts with the tag. Made in France, or made in Italy. Two simple words that have become synonymous with craftsmanship, tradition, and prestige. When customers see that, they imagine a quiet Parisian atelier, an old man with weathered hands meticulously stitching leather, one bag at a time. They see centuries of heritage passed down like secret recipes. They see exclusivity, legacy, worth. But what they're really getting is a masterclass in marketing smoke and mirrors. Here's the truth. Most of these so-called French-made luxury items are globally sourced Frankenstein products, stitched together through a vast, invisible supply chain that's designed not to create beauty, but to protect margins and maximize markup. Let's take a Louis Vuitton Capucine's bag as an example. Retail price? Anywhere from $7,000 to upwards of $38,000, depending on the materials and customization. You'd think that kind of price tag would reflect rare materials and elite craftsmanship, right? Wrong. That $38,000 bag likely begins its life in a Chinese or Vietnamese factory. The main body? Mass-produced monogram canvas or pre-treated Italian leather imported by the ton. Cost? Around $400 to $450 per hide, less if bought in bulk. The stitching? Industrial-grade polyester thread that costs no more than $25 for a full roll, enough to make dozens of bags. The hardware, gold-tone clasps, feet, zippers, comes from electroplating factories in Guangdong or India. That's maybe $150 total. Let's be generous and say $700 in materials. Add in labor. Mostly done in Asian factories at a fraction of European wages, and maybe you're looking at $1,000 all in for production, shipping, and packaging. That's if they don't use automation, which they often do. Now, here's the sleight of hand. That mostly finished bag gets shipped to France or Italy. They're in a small, picturesque workshop built more for brand tours than manufacturing. A worker might attach the final buckle or stitch on the handle. 5-10 minutes of labor. That's all it takes to legally slap on the coveted Made in France tag. Because according to European Union trade law, an item can be considered made in country if its last substantial transformation takes place there. And the brands know exactly how to game that system. It's a technicality, a loophole, but one that's been exploited to the tune of billions. Meanwhile, the customer sees the tag and thinks they're buying legacy. But what they're actually buying is logistics. Supply chains that snake through warehouses in China, tanneries in Brazil, and assembly lines in Vietnam, before making a brief pit stop in France for branding purposes. And let's talk branding, because that's where the real cost is. These companies spend more on image than on materials. A single marketing campaign for a luxury house can cost tens of millions. Think about it. Global ad buys, celebrity endorsements, fashion week shows, influencer partnerships, boutique launches. By the time you see a Louis Vuitton bag in the window, it's not just a purse. It's a billboard, a product of manufactured desire. So when you hand over $38,000 for that bag, here's where your money's really going. $1,000, actual materials, labor, packaging, and shipping. $2,000, boutique overhead, employee commissions, and storage. $5,000, marketing, celebrity endorsement costs, campaign visuals. $30,000, brand markup, Pure profit powered by illusion is not about quality. It's about perception. Luxury branding has taught customers to romanticize pain. We've been trained to believe the higher the price, the greater the prestige. That exclusivity is worth any cost. That suffering through wait lists and playing boutique politics is a sign of taste, not manipulation. That owning a Louis Vuitton bag makes us part of a secret club. But here's the reality. These aren't sacred artifacts. They're engineered products built by global corporations who know exactly how to extract every ounce of value from a piece of leather. Brands like Louis Vuitton don't sell bags. They sell stories. Stories of French sophistication, of timeless elegance, of heritage. And those stories are crafted in ad agencies, not ateliers. The lie isn't just in the tag. It's in the showroom, the influencer unboxing, the careful language that never quite says 100% handmade in France, but always implies it. It's in the Instagram captions that say crafted with care, but never tell you where. It's in the way boutique staff are trained to talk about our artisans, but deflect when you ask where those artisans actually live. This isn't about one bag. This is about an entire industry built on manipulation. About paying $38,000 for a product that cost less than a MacBook to make, and believing you get a piece of culture instead of a piece of corporate strategy. And now that the factory doors have been flung open on TikTok, the secret's out. The myth is bleeding. And the customers who once bought into it blindly are finally asking the question luxury brands feared most. What exactly did I just pay for? If the TikTok videos cracked the surface, Candace Owens took a sledgehammer to the foundation. It started with a single post, blunt, unapologetic, and unmistakably Owens. Louis Vuitton doesn't sell fashion, she wrote. They sell fantasy. Expensive lies, dressed up in French tags, made in China. Boom. One sentence, and the quiet murmurs about shady luxury manufacturing were suddenly a 5-alarm firestorm. In her signature scorched earth style, Candace didn't just call out Louis Vuitton. She dismantled the entire culture surrounding it. You're not paying for quality. You're paying for story. A story written by PR teams in Paris and stitched together by teenagers in Shenzhen. She didn't stop there. In a now viral video, Owens held up a Louis Vuitton bag she claimed was gifted to her years ago. I used to think this meant something. Status, taste, value. Now I look at it and see brainwashing. They sell you a dream. They mark it up 3,000%, and they rely on your silence and shame to keep the scam going. That video exploded. Fashion insiders were horrified. Influencers got nervous. But the mainstream public? They leaned in. Because when Candace speaks, people listen, whether they love her or hate her. Her name alone guarantees outrage, headlines, and engagement. And this time, she was targeting not politics, but purses. Not policies, but prestige. And that shift made it even more dangerous for brands like Louis Vuitton. Suddenly, this wasn't just a niche fashion scandal. It was a culture war moment. The right applauded her takedown of globalist elitism, framing it as yet another example of how the rich exploit the system while the working class foots the bill. Meanwhile, parts of the left, especially fashion progressives, begrudgingly agreed. Owens may be controversial, but the footage doesn't lie. The bags don't lie, and the numbers definitely don't lie. Some accused her of turning a labor rights issue into political theater. Others argued she was exposing something fashion media had ignored for too long. Either way, the message hit harder coming from someone outside the traditional fashion ecosystem. This wasn't a fashion critic or designer making waves. This was a culture commentator known for throwing bombs, and now, one had landed squarely on Louis Vuitton's monogram doorstep. In interviews, Owens doubled down. This isn't about a bag. It's about the lie. You've got single moms working overtime to afford something they believe is French, elegant, and worth it, when in reality, it's the same leather, the same stitching from the same factories that make Walmart wallets. It was that last line that went viral again. The same factories that make Walmart wallets. Her words became memes. Headlines. Debate points. Suddenly, the fantasy Louis Vuitton had so carefully cultivated began to buckle. Not just because of what Owens said, but because people were already primed to believe it. The factory footage had cracked open the vault. But it was Candace Owens who walked in and flipped on the light. And once that light was on, the myth of luxury, that sacred, shimmering illusion, was no longer protected by the dark. The internet didn't just react, it erupted. Once Candace Owens lit the match, social media turned into a bonfire of outrage, disbelief, and pure betrayal. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, they all exploded with accusations, exposés, and emotional reckonings. Suddenly, it wasn't just fringe commentary or fashion conspiracy. This was personal. A TikTok user with over 300,000 followers posted a side-by-side comparison of two Louis Vuitton bags she owned. One bought directly from the Champs-Élysées flagship store, the other from a U.S. boutique. Same model, same price, but everything was different. The stitching is uneven on this one. The leather feels plastic-y. And look at the interior tag. It's crooked, she said, holding both bags up to the camera. You're telling me this was made in France? Be serious. That video got 12 million views in 2 days. Then came the Reddit threads, thousands of them. On our /female fashion advice, our /luxury porn, even our /anti-work. Titles like LV caught red-handed and I spent $3,800 for this flooded the feeds. Photos of fraying seams, sloppy embossing, misaligned monograms. Stories of customers walking into stores to return their bags, only to be met with defensiveness or denial. This feels like betrayal, wrote one user. I saved up for months to buy my dream bag, and now I find out it's just overpriced outsourcing with a fancy stamp. But the most damning blows didn't come from ordinary users. They came from influencers, the same ones who built their careers flaunting LV bags in soft lighting and curated outfits. Now, some of them are flipping the script. A former Louis Vuitton ambassador shocked fans when she posted a video titled "The Truth About My LV Partnership." In it, she claimed she'd been instructed never to discuss sourcing or manufacturing during Q&As and was warned against inspecting bags too closely on camera. They didn't want me to show the tags, she said. And now I know why. Her confession sent ripples through the influencer economy. Dozens followed suit, either publicly denouncing the brand or quietly scrubbing their Louis Vuitton content from their feeds. One of the most dramatic moments came in the form of a live-streamed bag burning. A TikTok creator, visibly emotional, filmed herself throwing a $2,700 LV Neverfull into a fire pit. This was supposed to be a milestone, she said through tears. My first luxury purchase. I was proud. I felt like I made it. And now I realize I was just buying into a lie. That clip didn't just go viral. It started a trend. Others began posting videos of themselves returning bags, trashing receipts, or slapping made in China stickers on their designer items. Some even stitched factory footage into their LV unboxings with captions like, "You mean this came from there?" The tone shifted fast. What started as suspicion became fury. What was once aspiration now felt like exploitation. Louis Vuitton wasn't just facing bad press. It was facing emotional rebellion. Consumers weren't just upset about being misled. They were grieving the illusion, the elegance, the prestige they thought they were buying into. Because luxury, at its core, is about more than leather and stitching. It's about belonging. And for many, this scandal proved they'd never really belonged at all. Now they were angry and loud and very, very online. It didn't take long for the digital outrage to bleed into the real world. One by one, the temples of luxury began to empty out. In Paris, the Louis Vuitton flagship on the Champs-Élysées, once a near-mythical pilgrimage site for fashion lovers, stood strangely quiet. The velvet ropes were still there, looped in perfect coils outside the grand double doors, but there were no lines. No tourists taking selfies in front of the golden signage. No personal shoppers greeting VIP clients at the entrance. Just a lone security guard shifting on his feet, glancing at his phone, waiting for anyone to walk in. Inside, the mood was worse. Sales associates leaned against pristine marble counters, whispering among themselves. Rows of monogrammed handbags sat untouched under glass domes. Their once hallowed aura suddenly awkward and exposed. The silence echoed. What used to feel like an elite boutique now felt like a forgotten museum. London's Bond Street store fared no better. A location known for attracting celebrities, royalty, and ultra-high net worth clients now looked like a showroom during a blackout sale. "We've never seen it like this," whispered a shopper passing by. Not even during the pandemic. In New York, the Soho Boutique, formerly a bustling hotspot for influencers and fashion editors, was described in one TikTok video as giving clearance rack energy. Another clip went viral showing two employees rearranging the same shelf of wallets for over 15 minutes, just to look busy. The comments were brutal. They used to have a line out the door. Now, they're reorganizing dust. This wasn't just a sales dip. It was a collapse of presence. For years, the in-store experience was half the appeal. The attentive staff, the champagne service, the private rooms. It made customers feel chosen, special, part of something bigger. But now, that exclusivity fell hollow. Performative, like theater without an audience. Retail experts began circulating internal data leaks. Foot traffic had dropped by nearly 40% in key global stores. Return rates were spiking. Gift card purchases had plummeted. Corporate insiders described panic mode, meetings, and a freeze on new store openings. And the press took notice. Headlines from Business of Fashion and WWD read like eulogies. Luxury loses its luster. Louis Vuitton battles perception crisis as boutiques go quiet. But beyond the numbers, there was a deeper symbolic shift. These boutiques weren't just stores. They were monuments, cathedrals built to the myth of craftsmanship, heritage, and exclusivity. The silence inside them, it wasn't just economic. It was existential. Because when the crowds disappear, when the magic fades, and when even the die-hard loyalists stop showing up, you're left with something raw and unsettling. Just expensive items in a pretty room. The illusion, so carefully constructed over decades, had cracked. The mystique was dead. In its place was a cold truth that no amount of branding could cover up. Luxury didn't feel like a dream anymore. It felt like a scam. This was never just about handbags. For so many, luxury, true luxury, was about more than fashion. It was about aspiration, identity, a dream carefully constructed over time, brick by emotional brick. That monogram didn't just say Louis Vuitton. It said arrival. It said, "I've made it." It whispered validation, elegance, success. That tiny gold emblem on a leather strap had the power to speak volumes in a single glance. And now, it says fool. Across forums, group chats, and comment sections, the sentiment is raw and almost too painful to read. One woman on Reddit wrote, "I work 2 jobs and saved for almost 3 years to buy my first Louis. It was a gift to myself after graduating law school. Now I feel like I paid thousands for a lie." She wasn't alone. Another post, under a now viral TikTok clip showing workers in a Chinese factory stitching LV bags, simply read, "I bought mine because I believed in the craftsmanship." The history, the romance. Now I just see factory lights and profit margins. The betrayal cuts deep. Because for so many customers, these purchases weren't impulsive, they were milestones. A 40th birthday, a big promotion, an engagement, moments people wanted to mark with something timeless, prestigious, and real. They didn't just buy a product, they bought into a story, one carefully sold to them for generations. That Louis Vuitton was about heritage, French artistry, hand-selected materials, and perfection down to the last stitch. But now that illusion is falling apart. And when the illusion breaks, so does the self-image it supported. This isn't just financial buyer's remorse, it's existential. Because if the bag is fake in spirit, what does that make the victory it was meant to represent? What does it say about the dream they believed in? There's a reason people are burning bags on camera. It's not just protest, it's mourning. They're grieving a part of themselves that felt elevated by that purchase. Grieving the pride they felt when someone noticed they're never full or they're speedy. Grieving the belief that they had stepped into a different class, a different realm, if only for a moment. What hurts most isn't the price tag. It's the feeling that their trust was used against them. That luxury wasn't an invitation. It was a con, a performance, a story sold to millions at a premium. And now that the curtain's been pulled back, what's left? Not heritage, not craftsmanship, not pride, just a logo, one that used to mean everything, now soaked in shame. Once the Louis Vuitton curtain dropped, the natural question followed. Who's next? Because let's be honest, Louis Vuitton wasn't operating in a vacuum. The practices exposed, the outsourcing, the strategic made-in-France loopholes, the viral factory footage, didn't emerge from some rogue business model. They're part of a pattern, a playbook that's quietly circulated behind polished glass storefronts from Paris to Milan to Rodeo Drive. And now that the playbook's been leaked, the industry itself is under suspicion. Let's talk about Gucci. In 2011, the Wall Street Journal published a report on Gucci outsourcing some of its production to Chinese-owned factories in Italy. Yes, technically on Italian soil, but with labor flown in and paid far below Italian artisan rates. They called it Made in Italy, but it was a technicality, one that made global headlines, then mysteriously vanished from public discourse. Sound familiar? Dior? A 2018 French documentary featured whistleblowers from a supplier who claimed components of Dior bags were sourced from low-cost factories in Eastern Europe before being sent to France for the final stitching. Why? Because stitching in France means you get a stamp made in France. That's the rule, the bare minimum needed to maintain the fantasy. Prada? In 2010, the brand openly admitted to shifting large parts of its production to China in order to stay competitive. And yet, years later, those same Prada bags, stitched in Guangdong, lined in Dongguan, still bore the proud Made in Italy label thanks to small final stage assembly done in Tuscany. Smoke, mirrors, prestige, and that's just the top layer. Insiders have whispered for years about white label manufacturers, high-end factories in Vietnam, Turkey, Bangladesh, who quietly produce bags and shoes for multiple luxury houses, sometimes in the same facility, using the same machines, same leather, even the same laborers. The only difference? The logo stamped on at the end. Luxury conglomerates like LVMH and Kering don't talk about this. They talk about heritage, craft, Maison DNA. But ask any supply chain analyst off the record, and they'll tell you, the real business of fashion isn't about elegance. It's about margins. If a $35 piece of hardware can be bought for $3 in Shenzhen, it's getting bought. If hand stitching in Italy costs $100 an hour and machine finishing in Ho Chi Minh City costs $12, guess where the next speedy strap is getting made? The system wasn't broken. It was built this way. A house of luxury cards, carefully constructed on romanticized myths of ateliers, artisans, and made in Europe pride. But behind the showroom, it's globalization, plain and simple, just cloaked in luxury gloss. And now, the public knows. What started with Louis Vuitton may be just the first domino. Because the question is no longer, is Louis faking the fantasy? Is there a single major brand that isn't? If the answer is no, then the scandal isn't just about one label. It's about a global lie, and the entire luxury empire might be built on it. Now that the illusion has shattered and the smoke has cleared, we're left with a real question. What happens now? Can Louis Vuitton recover from this? Can a brand built on exclusivity, heritage, and timelessness survive once the spell is broken? When viral footage shows factory workers in Dongguan saying, "We made this, not France," can any amount of glossy advertising or celebrity endorsements bring back that mystique? The answer isn't simple, because this isn't just a marketing crisis. It's a trust crisis, a cultural wound. The French government has already come under pressure to reevaluate what qualifies as made in France. There are calls across the EU to tighten origin labeling laws, to close the loopholes that allow brands to do 95% of production overseas and slap on a Euro tag with a few stitches on home soil. But legislation is slow, and these brands? They're global titans with armies of lawyers and billions in lobbying weight. What about the courts? Could class action lawsuits be next? Consumers claiming they paid for heritage and got hype? There's precedent, especially in the US, for deceptive labeling lawsuits. If enough customers come forward, alleging fraud or misrepresentation, we could see luxury brands dragged into very public courtroom battles. Imagine Vuitton execs testifying under oath, forced to explain factory contracts and raw material invoices. It will be brand suicide. And then there's the consumer. The heart of this story. Will they forgive? Some won't, especially those who saved for months, even years, for their first Louis bag, only to find out it was stitched by underpaid workers far from the romantic Parisian ateliers they imagined. For them, the betrayal isn't financial, it's emotional. They didn't just buy a bag, they bought into a dream, and now they feel played. But others? They might shrug and keep shopping, because for some, the logo is louder than the truth. And that's what luxury houses are betting on. That brand loyalty and influencer culture will eventually drown out the outrage. Still, there's a shift in the air. Consumers are more informed, more curious, and more suspicious than ever. They're reading labels, watching factory footage, asking hard questions. And every time another whistleblower speaks out, another TikTok goes viral, another influencer turns on the brand, that shift deepens. So what's next? Will Louis Vuitton be forced to finally tell the truth? Will Gucci, Dior, and Prada be next on the chopping block? Will Made in France ever mean what we think it means again? Or, and this is the chilling question, if Louis Vuitton lied, who else is lying? And how deep does the lie go?